It started on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of quiet day that feels almost too still, like the world's holding its breath. I was standing in the kitchen, waiting for the kettle to boil, when I heard a knock at the door. 3 sharp taps. Not my husband's knock. When I opened it, Ethan was there, my husband's friend. He was smiling, polite as always, but there was something in his eyes that didn't match the smile. He looked unsettled. Hey, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. Is David around? He just stepped out, I said. You want to wait? He hesitated, then nodded. I stepped aside to let him in. The house felt too quiet as he walked in. Just the hum of the fridge, the kettle clicking off, the faint smell of rain from outside. I poured 2 mugs of tea, though I wasn't sure why. Something about the way he stood there, hands in his pockets, staring at the floor. It made me uneasy. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The kind of silence that makes every small sound, the clink of a spoon, the rustle of a sleeve, feel amplified. He finally spoke. I've been meaning to talk to you, he said, eyes flicking up, then away. About what? He took a slow breath. About your marriage. I laughed a little, out of habit, out of disbelief. My marriage. Yeah, he said quietly. I think something's off. That word off hung in the air like static. I studied him. He wasn't the type to gossip or meddle. He'd known my husband for years, since college, maybe longer. They played cards on Thursdays, went fishing in the summer. I'd always seen him as the harmless third wheel in our little social circle. But the way he looked at me now, steady, searching, didn't feel harmless. What are you trying to say, Ethan? I asked. He swallowed, his jaw tightening. I've seen things. The way he talks to you. The way he doesn't look at you anymore. My pulse quickened. You're overthinking. Maybe, he said, but his tone made it clear he didn't believe that. The rain started again, tapping against the window. I wrapped my hands around the mug, more for something to hold than for warmth. He leaned forward, voice lower now. You don't deserve to be invisible, you know that? I didn't know what to say. The words sounded too heavy, too personal, like he'd crossed some invisible line neither of us knew how to step back from. I tried to change the subject, but his eyes stayed on me, unblinking. Then he said something I'll never forget, something that made my stomach drop, and my whole view of my marriage shift in a single breath. He said, David isn't who you think he is. And before I could ask what he meant, he stood up, as if he'd said too much, and walked out into the rain. I stood there for a long time after Ethan left, watching the rain blur across the window until the street outside turned to silver streaks. His words echoed in my head like something I wasn't supposed to hear. David isn't who you think he is. I wanted to believe it was nothing, a misunderstanding, maybe something said in frustration. But there was a weight in Ethan's tone that I couldn't shake. He hadn't looked angry or jealous. He looked sorry, and that was worse. When David came home later that evening, he was his usual self, calm, distracted, phone in hand. He kissed my cheek absent-mindedly and went straight to his office. He didn't ask if anyone had come by, didn't notice that I made his favorite dinner, and barely touched my own plate. That's when it hit me. Ethan was right about one thing. Somewhere along the way, my husband had stopped seeing me. We used to talk about everything, movies, work, even the smallest things like the strange neighbor's dog that barked at nothing. But now the house was mostly quiet. 2 people living side by side, exchanging reminders instead of affection. And now there was Ethan. He'd always been around, the easygoing friend, always joking, always helpful. When David was away for work, Ethan would check in, drop off something David forgot, fix the leaky faucet. I never thought much of it. Until lately. Now, every memory of him felt different. The way he'd listen a little too closely when I spoke, the way his laughter would soften when our eyes met for a second too long. Maybe I had ignored it because I didn't want to see it. That night, I replayed every conversation we'd had, every glance, every silence that felt heavier than it should have. Was Ethan trying to warn me? Or was he trying to tell me something else entirely? The next morning, I tried calling him. Straight to voicemail. I left a short message. Casual, or at least I tried to make it sound that way. Hey, about yesterday, what did you mean? No reply. By the 3rd day, I couldn't stand it. I found myself walking to the small cafe near the park, the one he always mentioned working from when he needed space. I didn't even know what I was expecting. Maybe a simple explanation, something to make this uneasy feeling go away. But when I got there, I saw him, sitting by the window, coffee untouched, staring out at the rain again. And beside him was a folder. My husband's name written across the front. He saw me before I could move. His expression shifted, guilt, hesitation, something else I couldn't name. I walked toward him slowly, my pulse in my throat. "Ethan," I said quietly, "what's in that folder?" He didn't answer. He just pushed it toward me, eyes down. And I realized this wasn't about jealousy. It was something much deeper. I sat across from Ethan in that small cafe, the sound of rain soft against the glass. The folder between us felt heavier than it looked, as if whatever was inside could change everything I thought I knew. He didn't look at me at first. His hands were clasped together, fingers tense, like he was trying to stop himself from saying too much. "Ethan," I said again, quieter this time, "tell me what this is." He hesitated, then slid the folder closer. "I wasn't going to show you," he said, "but you deserve to know." Inside were a few printed emails, some screenshots, and a photo. My husband standing outside a house I didn't recognize. Not with another woman, not anything dramatic like that. But his hand rested on someone's shoulder, a young man's. And there was something in David's expression I couldn't read. "This isn't what you think," I said, though I didn't even know what I thought. Ethan leaned forward. "I know it looks strange, but I found these while helping him move some files last month." He said it was for work, but he trailed off. The rain outside grew louder. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. "But what?" "I don't think it's about work," he said finally. "There's something else going on. Something he's been hiding." My first instinct was to defend my husband, to protect the version of him I'd built in my mind. But then I remembered the silence at home, the way his eyes always seemed elsewhere. The nights he said he was working late, but his phone would be turned off. Still, hearing it from Ethan, his friend, made it worse. I closed the folder, unable to look anymore. "Why are you showing me this? What do you expect me to do?" He exhaled, his voice unsteady. "Because you keep pretending everything's fine. And it's not. You don't have to go through this alone." There was a pause. A long, uncomfortable one. I could see how hard it was for him to say that. And I realized this wasn't just about loyalty or friendship. There was something deeper in his concern. Something personal. But before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A message from David. "Ethan's lying. Don't believe him." The cafe seemed to tilt for a second. My chest tightened. I looked up, but Ethan was already standing, his chair scraping the floor. "Just be careful," he said softly. "You don't know him like you think you do." Then he walked out into the rain again, leaving the folder behind, and me sitting there wondering who I could trust. The rain didn't stop that night. It just kept falling, soft, steady, relentless, like it was trying to drown out the noise in my head. I sat at the kitchen table, the folder open again in front of me. The same pages, the same photo, the same unanswered question. Who was that person? And why had David lied? Every time I thought I had an answer, another doubt surfaced. When David came home, he hung his jacket, kissed my forehead lightly, the same routine. But his eyes lingered on the counter where I'd left my phone. Maybe he'd seen the message. Maybe he already knew what Ethan had told me. "Long day?" I asked, pretending everything was normal. "Yeah," he said. "You?" Quiet. He poured himself a drink, his back turned. I watched the small movements, the slow swirl of the glass, the way his shoulders tightened. That tiny, almost invisible shift that said he was holding something in. Finally, I asked, "Why did Ethan say those things about you?" He froze, just for a second, then turned around with a calm smile. "What things?" "Don't," I said. My voice came out sharper than I meant. He showed me something. His eyes flickered, surprise, irritation, something darker, before he set the glass down. "You shouldn't listen to him. He's been unstable lately." "Unstable," I repeated, not sure whether to laugh or panic. "David, he's your friend." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. He was, until he started crossing lines, saying things he shouldn't. The air between us felt tight. I could hear my own breathing. "What kind of things?" "About us," he said. "About you." It felt like the floor shifted. The way he said you, not protective, not tender, more like a warning. I wanted to ask more, but my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Just 2 words. Check your email. David's eyes followed the screen in my hand. He didn't say a word, but his jaw tensed. I'm going to bed, he said quietly, and walked down the hall. The door closed behind him with a slow, deliberate click. My hand was shaking as I opened my laptop. One new message. No Zenda Nama. No subject line. Just a single attachment. A video file. The preview froze on the first frame. David. The same house from the photo. And then, before I could hit play, the screen went black. Power out. Only the rain and the faint sound of the bedroom door unlocking. For a moment, I thought it was just the storm that knocked out the power. But then I heard it. A faint sound from down the hallway. Not loud, not threatening. Just the slow creak of the bedroom door opening wider. David, I called out, but my voice felt small, almost swallowed by the dark. No answer. I grabbed my phone, its screen glowing just enough to light the way. Every shadow in the house felt wrong. Too long, too still. My laptop was still on the table, the email still open, the video file waiting. And then a second buzz. A new message. Unknown number. Don't let him see it. My chest tightened. I turned toward the hall and froze. David stood there, half lit by the flash of lightning from outside. His face calm, but his eyes sharp, focused on the laptop. What's that? He asked quietly. I swallowed hard. Just an email. Work stuff. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate. Work? At midnight, the air felt charged, heavy with everything unsaid. I could hear the rain again, louder now like it was pushing against the windows. He reached for the laptop, and I instinctively pulled it back. David, stop. You're scaring me. That seemed to catch him off guard. His expression softened, just for a second. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, I don't want you getting dragged into something you don't understand. Then help me understand, I said. He hesitated, then sat down. You know the guy in that picture? His name's Alex. He used to work with me. We started a project together, something that got complicated. I waited for him to go on, but he didn't. He just stared at his hands like the rest of the truth was something he couldn't say out loud. When the power flickered back on, my laptop screen glowed again. The video started automatically. No sound at first, just motion. David and Alex standing outside that same house. Talking, arguing. Then David turning away, looking right toward the camera. He saw me watching, and I realized it wasn't recorded by him. It was recorded of him. He reached over and shut the laptop with a firm snap. Who sent you that? I don't know, I said. Maybe Ethan. Ethan needs to stop. He cut in sharper now. He's been digging into things he shouldn't. He doesn't know what he's dealing with. Then what am I dealing with, David? He looked at me, tired, almost pleading. Something that could ruin everything. Before I could ask what he meant, headlights flashed through the window. A car pulled up outside, fast, braking hard. David stood immediately. Stay here. But I was already moving toward the door, heart pounding. Through the rain-streaked glass, I saw Ethan step out of the car, soaked, frantic, holding his phone up like proof. And behind him, in the glare of the headlights, someone else was standing. Someone who looked exactly like David. For a second, my mind refused to process what I was seeing. 2 men, both with the same build, same face, same everything, standing in the rain. One at the doorway beside me, one under the headlights outside. Ethan shouted something I couldn't hear through the storm. The man beside me, the one who'd been living in my house, sitting at my table, stiffened. Don't open that door, he said sharply. But I already had my hand on the knob. My pulse was racing, my breath uneven. David, I whispered, what's going on? He didn't answer. Instead, he moved toward me, slow and deliberate, as if trying to stop me gently. Please, just listen to me before you do anything. Outside, Ethan was still yelling. He's not your husband, Anna. That's not David. I froze. My hand slipped from the doorknob. What are you talking about? I called out through the door. Ethan's voice broke through the rain. The real David. He's been missing for weeks. The man inside your house isn't him. I turned to face the man beside me. His jaw was tight, his eyes desperate. He's lying, he said quickly. You can't believe him. He doesn't know what he's saying. Everything around me felt warped. The thunder, the flickering lights, the pounding in my chest. I stepped back, searching his face for something familiar, something true. "Tell me something only David would know," I said. He didn't answer right away. His silence was worse than any lie. Then he whispered, "You hate the smell of cinnamon." My breath caught. That was true, but it wasn't enough. Too many people could have known that. Before I could move, Ethan pushed through the door, drenched and shaking. "Anna, get back." He was holding his phone out, screen glowing. On it was a video, the same one from my email, but longer this time. I saw him, the man standing beside me, inside that strange house, looking straight into the camera. And behind him, the real David, bound to a chair. My knees nearly gave out. The man beside me stepped forward, voice low. "You weren't supposed to see that." Ethan moved between us. "It's over. The police are on their way." Lightning flashed, and for an instant, I saw it, a flicker of something like regret in the imposter's eyes. He didn't run, didn't fight. He just whispered, almost to himself, "I just wanted to fix what he broke." Then he turned and walked out into the rain, vanishing before the next flash of light. Ethan caught me as I started to tremble. The storm raged outside, and somewhere in the distance, sirens began to wail. But even through the chaos, one thought wouldn't leave my mind. That moment of hesitation, that look in his eyes. He knew me. Somehow, he really knew me. By the time the sirens stopped outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, thin, hesitant drops falling through a sky that finally seemed tired of holding on. The officers moved quietly through the house, asking questions, checking every room. Ethan stayed close, silent except for when he had to speak. I sat on the edge of the couch, clutching a blanket I didn't remember grabbing. They found no one. Whoever that man was, whoever he'd been pretending to be, he was gone. When they brought the real David home 2 days later, it didn't feel real. He was thinner, his face pale, but alive. He said he'd been taken by someone he used to work with, a man named Daniel, a developer who'd been helping with a private tech project that went too far. A face mapping program, voice synthesis, behavior learning. Daniel had used David's data to become him, to step into his life. For what reason, no one could quite explain. Money, revenge, obsession, the motives blurred together. All I knew was that for weeks, I'd lived beside someone who wasn't my husband, and I hadn't seen a difference. That truth hurt more than the lie itself. David tried to talk about it, tried to laugh even, but there was a new distance between us now, something fragile that words couldn't repair. We were polite, gentle, careful with each other, but I could feel how hard he was trying to rebuild something that might never feel the same. Ethan stopped visiting after the investigation ended. He sent a short message one evening. "I'm just glad you're safe." No goodbye, no explanation. Maybe he needed distance, or maybe he knew that whatever had passed between us, the worry, the trust, the strange connection, couldn't exist anymore. Sometimes, late at night, I catch myself remembering the imposter's final words. "I just wanted to fix what he broke." It's unsettling, the way those words echo, the way they almost sound sincere. Now, when it rains, I find myself standing by the window again, watching the water trace down the glass. The house feels quieter than before, but not empty. Just aware. I still keep that old folder in a drawer, sealed shut. I never deleted the video. Maybe part of me needs to remember, not what happened, but how easily truth can hide behind a familiar face. Sometimes love isn't about knowing someone completely. It's about realizing you never really did. And in that strange, quiet acceptance, I finally let go.